I had been driving for an hour and was beginning to feel sleepy. I had 3 more hours to go before I reached my hometown, and I didn't think I could do it without falling asleep at the wheel. I checked the clock on my dashboard and saw that it was 2:30 in the morning. I decided to stop at the next hotel I saw, just call it a night, and head home in the morning. It wasn't long before I saw a huge, 4-story hotel on the next turnoff. I looked across an old bridge, and there in the parking lot was a surprisingly well-maintained large 4-story hotel that looked like it had been built in the early 1900s. I thought it might be fun to go home in the morning and announce to my friends that I had spent the night at a creepy old hotel. As soon as I stepped inside the hotel, I was immediately taken aback by the Victorian-style interior. The entrance was like stepping into an older grand ballroom. Everything was immaculate and clean. Huge chandeliers hung from the ceiling, illuminating the ground floor with a warm amber glow. I checked into the hotel and was shocked to find out that I was going to have to pay $245 for a room. This was no ordinary cheap hotel. It turned out to be a historical hotel. Since I was already there, I decided to just go ahead and pay the price. My room was located on the 6th floor, but considering how small and old the elevators were, I took the stairwell just to make sure. When I reached the top of this large staircase, I noticed my room was located at the end of the hall. Upon entering my room, I was pleasantly surprised at how nice it was, and it definitely had a nostalgic feel to it. It had an old library feel to it too. I decided to call it quits for the night and went to bed. Sometime during the night, I was awakened by thunder and rain splashing in the windows, and then flashes of lightning. I woke up as another bolt of lightning flashed through the room, illuminating a shadow at the end of my bed, but it was gone as quickly as it had come. I sat up in bed, clearing my thoughts, and got out of bed to investigate. I quickly thought it was my overactive imagination. The hotel was beautiful, but it had a lot of old haunted stuff in the walls that had somehow wormed its way into my subconscious. I didn't find anything unusual, so I went back to sleep. As the storms continued to rage, I fell asleep again. About an hour or so later, I was awoken by a noise. This time it was like someone was knocking from inside the big closet next to the bathroom. Finally, I got up to check it out. The knocking had stopped. I stood there staring at the door like it was ajar, imagining what was behind it. My heart started to pound. I reached for it and opened it. To my surprise, it was empty. I heard knocking coming from the closet. This was getting very uncomfortable. I checked the front door before I went back to bed. I opened the door hesitantly and realized my hands were shaking as I peeked out and saw a woman wearing old clothes and with long black hair. I wondered if I was just seeing things, if maybe she had knocked on my door and I had thought the sound came from the closet, or if maybe she was just trying to find her room. I closed the door and made sure I was safe before I went back to bed and laid my head on the pillow. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I decided to keep an eye on the closet door, which, to my surprise, was slightly open. And that's when I felt something breathing on my neck. I watched the closet door slowly start to creak open, and I held my breath as the door finally opened all the way, and I twisted around to see a horrible, half-dead woman in bed with me. Jumping out of bed, I ran down the hall and down the stairs as fast as I could until I reached the front desk. I told the clerk there was someone in my room when I said, "Room 607. She frowned and immediately apologized. I was given the wrong keys by mistake. No one had stayed in that room in years. The hotel had restricted access because of multiple complaints about a scary woman haunting the room's occupants. I was told that in the mid-1900s, a woman died in that room and that she had been haunting the room ever since. I asked the employee for my belongings as I refused to return to the room. They gave me a room on the 2nd floor, and that was the last time I would spend the night at the haunted hotel. "7 years ago, when I was 19 years old and in my senior year of high school, I was on the softball team for our school's women's softball team. That particular year, our school's softball team was really good, and they were invited to an invitational tournament in Las Vegas. We stayed at a hotel about 15 minutes outside of the city. It was about 9 p.m. when we arrived. We split up into groups to stay in hotel rooms. I and 3 of my closest friends decided to stay in a room together. About an hour later, all 4 of us were unpacked and relaxing in our room. We were supposed to play our first match of the tournament the following morning. But as I was laying in bed, half asleep at this moment, the phone in our room rang. We were a bit surprised because I had stayed in a lot of hotels before, and I had never heard the hotel phone ring before. We all looked at each other, wide awake, wondering what was going on. We agreed to pick it up, and I decided to do it, so I picked up the phone and said the usual, "Hi." It was 7 years ago, so I don't remember the exact conversation, but I remember a man's almost low voice saying that we hadn't paid for a room and that one of us would have to go down to the lobby and pay for it. I immediately started freaking out because I knew he wasn't telling the truth. I had seen my coach pay for the room less than 2 hours ago. Why would they give us room keys if we didn't pay for them? Plus, even if something went wrong with the payment, calling the room this late would be unprofessional. I told him that we had paid for the room, but he ignored me. He kept insisting that only one of us had to come down because our room wasn't paid for by his voice. Now clearly frustrated, he followed up the claim with a threat that if we didn't send one person down, there would be consequences. Being a very paranoid person at the time, I thought the whole thing was wrong and didn't want to let either of us go downstairs to the lobby. I told him that we would stay in the room until someone came to pick us up and hang up the phone. I thought that if it was someone from the hotel, they would either come to the room or they would sort it out in the morning. I told everyone that I had a bad feeling about the guy and explained what had happened. Everyone agreed that there was no way we hadn't paid and that it was pretty unusual for a hotel front desk to call you in your room this late. Of course we were upset, but we decided to forget it and go to bed. No one came to evict us, but the phone in our room kept ringing throughout the night and several times the next morning. We told our coach about it, and he asked the staff at the front desk about it and if his payment for the room didn't go through. But to our surprise, they had no clue what we were talking about, and even said that the front desk wouldn't call us that late at night. They agreed to look at the security cameras to see if there was anything, but they didn't call back for the rest of the time we were there. Fortunately, nothing else happened to us, but the whole experience was very disturbing and has caused me a lot of questions, such as who called us, why would they want one of us to leave the room in the middle of the night, and how did they know which room we were in? To be honest, the more I think about it, the more it scares me, but I'm glad we chose to stay in the room that night. This incident occurred in the summer of 2006. I think I was 14 years old. I was staying with my mother and younger brother in a large city. We were visiting other relatives but decided not to stay at their home. On the day of our arrival at the hotel, my brother was younger than me, so my mother told me to keep a close eye on him while she checked us in and got our room card. My brother and I settled on a couch in the lobby and took a few minutes to relax. As we were sitting there, a man in his mid-40s came into the hotel. The couch was facing the hotel door, so I could get a good look at him. I remember he was very average looking, and when he described his features in detail, it could have generated multiple images. He sat down on the couch across from us. I didn't think much of it until I realized that he didn't approach the counter first. He just walked in and sat down. It made me feel a bit uncomfortable. Maybe I was a little paranoid, but I thought maybe he followed us in. Thankfully, my mom called us and said her room was ready. We left the lobby and headed to our room. A few hours later, we left the hotel to meet family. I forgot about him for the remainder of the day. We got back around 7 p.m., and my mom said we could go for a swim in the hotel pool. We all went back to our room and changed. A few minutes after we got in the pool, the same man came in and sat down. He was in jeans and a sweater, so he definitely wasn't going swimming. We didn't think anything of it until I noticed my mom was visibly worried and pointed him out. She said if he didn't leave within 5 minutes, we had to go back to our rooms. 5 minutes went by, and he was still there. We grabbed our stuff and left. It was almost 8 p.m., and we had brought a rented movie, so we planned to watch it and go straight to bed. I noticed my mom was a bit nervous because of the man watching us, and I was a bit worried too. About halfway through the movie, my mom gets up to go to the shower, and while she is in there, someone knocks on the door and says, "Housekeeping." I thought it was strange that the cleaning staff would come so late, but we needed another towel, so I opened the door. I wish I hadn't done that. It was the same scary man. He gave me a smile with a small wave. I just stood there, motionless, my mind automatically going to the worst-case scenario of kidnapping, torture, etc. I heard the shower running off, and he stood there for a while. Then he spoke to me about how I was swimming at that moment. My mom came out of the shower and saw him. He pulled me back, slammed the door, and she locked it. She called the front desk of our hotel on the phone to report him. I told her to call the police, but she didn't listen. She insisted on switching rooms. Then she heard footsteps going down the hall from our room. Thankfully, he left after that, so we switched rooms and didn't see him again during our stay.